Hello, my name is Madeline and welcome back to my channel and welcome to what is going to be a fun middle grade themed video. I wanted to sneak this in before the end of middle grade March and have just some fun middle grade type things to share with you. So I thought what would be better than making a list of my favorite middle grade books I read in the past year and sharing those with you. This is not a new idea. I've seen a number of people kind of take a specific genre and share their favorite books that they read the past year in that genre. Chantel comes to mind, and I'm sure I've seen other people doing this as well, and I wanted to do this for middle grade March. Middle grade is definitely one of the genres that I read more of. Last year I didn't read a ton of middle grade, but I was still able to pull together a list of 10 books that I absolutely adored, and I really want to share them with you. These books I have no doubt will become, lifelong favorite middle grade books for me, and it was a really nice mix of modern books published recently, as well as some classics. I have really kind of figured out my interests in middle grade. Anyways, I'm a big fan of middle grade. I'm a big fan of these 10 books, and let's just get into talking about them. I will say I wanted to kind of include the books that I read starting March 1st, 2024 through the end of February of 2025. So this does not include any books that I have read recently for middle grade March. Those books will be in next year's video, if that kind of makes sense. So this is, a year ago, my favorite books. One I have is a book that I read this past December, and I absolutely adored it, and that is none other than The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street by Karina and Glaser. This book is so cozy and so wonderful. We follow a family of 5 children. I think there are 5 of them. They live in Harlem in New York City, and they have received word a couple of days before Christmas that they are going to have to move out of their home. Their lease is not being renewed because they have this grumpy landlord who, doesn't like them very much and doesn't want them to stay living there. But the Vanderbeekers are so immersed in their community. They know everyone, they walk out on the street and they know people's names. They know all of the people who work in the local stores nearby, and it's just this really charming kind of environment. And so the children decide that they cannot leave their beloved home. They have to find a way to convince their landlord to let them stay. And so that is what they are up to in this book. It is lovely. It is so heartwarming. It feels like a modern classic in my opinion. And it's just a really good book. It is part of a series, so I'm excited to have some more Vanderbeeker books to get to because this family is so much fun to spend time with. Next up are actually 2 books that I kind of grouped together and want to talk about at the same time because they are a duology, and I couldn't choose just one of them, so I had to include both of those. And I'm talking about Family Grandstand and Family Sabbatical by Ryrie Brink. This is another book that focuses on a family. We are following a family with 3 children. And in Family Grandstand, they are living in this quaint college town. The dad is a professor. The mom writes mystery novels. A lot of football going on in this first book. They befriend a football player who is having kind of a hard time in school, but he's a really good football player, and the kids kind of befriend him, and there's this sweet story of friendship going on. There's a lot about watching the football games from their house. They have a view of things, so they are kind of in a prime spot for that. And anyways, this book is just very cozy. It would be a great fall read. Very small town, collegiate kind of vibes to it, and I really enjoyed that. Then Family Sabbatical. The family goes on sabbatical in France for a year. The dad is a professor, like I mentioned, a history professor, and so he goes to France to gather some information, do some research for some upcoming projects, and it takes the family along. and they, you know, get to experience life in a different country. And they hire a woman to teach the kids, to be their French teacher. Really sweet, getting to see kind of that relationship again that forms between the three kids and this woman, this teacher. I just love these books. I love the sibling dynamics. Like Vanderbeekers, these books just have excellent dynamics between the siblings. Each kid has its own unique personality, their own kind of quirks and things, and they feel like different people, but then you get to kind of see them together as a family unit, as siblings, and the way they interact and behave, and that is so much fun. Ryrie Brink is becoming a middle grade author who I want to read everything that she's written because her books are a lot of fun. Another book I read recently this winter is Astrid the Unstoppable by Parr. This is set in Norway. It's very wintry, as you can see by the cover. And we follow Astrid, who is this spunky little girl. She's the only kid who lives in her village. And it's, you know, this super, super tiny village. And, but there is a wellness resort spa that is there, but the owner hates children, and so children are never allowed, families are never allowed to come and stay there. And you know, this is so sad for Astrid, because all she wants are some kids around to play with, and there are never any kids. Until one day a family shows up at the wellness resort and she is able to befriend some children. But what this is really about is Astrid's relationship with Gunnulf, who is an older man, who Astrid is just kind of his best friend, and you know, despite this age difference, they get up to adventures together. Gunvald, I kept saying Gunnulf, it's not Gunnulf, it's Gunvald. It's the relationship between Astrid and Gunvald. Charming, sweet story. There are a lot of references to Heidi, which is also really fun. If you are a fan of Heidi, I think you would really enjoy this book. I have this later on the list. The list is in no particular order, but since I mentioned Heidi, I have to go and talk about Heidi by Johanna Spyri. This was my first time reading this book this past summer, and oh my goodness, it is so charming. Everyone kind of knows the story of Heidi, this little girl who gets shipped off to live with her grandpa on the mountain. Grandpa is kind of this grumpy character, you know, people don't really like him, people don't understand him, but he's so sweet and loving and takes such good care of Heidi. Eventually Heidi gets taken away from him and has to go live in the city, and her heart is just longing to be back with her grandfather, to be back on the mountain. And yeah, this is such a good story. There's so many deep, profound lessons to take from it, which is why I like reading middle grade. It is not just kind of surface level. There can be a lot of depth to it, and you know, it's not just stories for kids. As an adult, you can get so much out of it as well. This was a great book to read in the summertime because it felt very summery, and I loved it so much. I've been just really enjoying reading classic middle grade books that I never read as a kid, and getting to enjoy them as an adult is something very special. Next up, I have The Year of Miss Agnes by Kirkpatrick. I read this past fall, and it is a very good fall read because it is set in Alaska. And Miss Agnes is the new school teacher in this little village in Alaska, and their school teachers don't last very long. The kids have a way of kind of scaring the teachers off and making them not want to come back. But Miss Agnes seems different. She has a different way of doing things and a different way of relating to the kids. And there is a moment in this book that I think is one of the most memorable moments for me. Agnes is teaching the children to read, and the way she goes about it is so wonderful and so good, and just was so moving. For just a short little book, it packs a really big punch. There are a lot of details about life in Alaska too that are really interesting. You get to really feel immersed in this setting. You get to see what they're eating and, you know, what they wear and what their days are like. And I just really, really enjoyed this book. I can't recommend it enough. Next up is a book that is kind of different, and that is the Mona Lisa Vanishes. I will pop up a picture. I don't have the author's name written down. But this book was a lot of fun. In fact, it reminds me of another middle grade book I read a couple of years ago called Bomb, that was all about the making of the atomic bomb. But this book is in a different vein, but kind of similar writing style, is about the theft of the Mona Lisa painting, which I never knew that the Mona Lisa was stolen. And it goes through kind of the history, what was going on at the time, how all of these circumstances kind of collided to make this perfect scenario, so to speak, of the Mona Lisa being stolen and becoming kind of, you know, going viral kind of before, you know, the internet, but just becoming this international sensation, and how it really contributed to the fame that is now attributed to the Mona Lisa painting. You know, if you go to the Louvre, there are just signs everywhere pointing to, you know, what path to take to go see the Mona Lisa. And I've been fortunate to live in Paris and to go to the Louvre multiple times, and you will just see masses of tourists enter and like make their way directly to the Mona Lisa, and then, you know, kind of go maybe somewhere else and leave. But, you know, like, they go to this museum that is full of amazing artwork to see the Mona Lisa. Kind of, you know, find out in the book that, yes, the Mona Lisa is a wonderful painting, but it certainly isn't, you know, the best painting. But it's because of this theft, because it was stolen, because it became so famous. It was this international news event, one of, you know, the earliest events that kind of traveled the world and became popular all over. And all of that contributed to its insane fame right now. So like I said, it's a super interesting historical topic that I didn't know anything about, and this book is written in such a fun and engaging way. I think whether you like history or not, whether you are handing this to your kid who likes history or not, I think they would really be engaged in this book, and it is a very, very fun story. Next up is My Side of the Mountain, and I read this while on vacation in the mountains. I wanted something set in the mountains to read on vacation, and I, you know, came across this middle grade book that I never read as a kid. It's obviously very, very famous, and I picked it up and I had such a wonderful time. We are following this boy who leaves life in New York City behind and goes out into the Catskill Mountains and is determined to survive there. And, you know, there are plenty of books where, you know, a character goes out into the mountains and tries to survive, but this one particularly drew me in. I loved the story. The writing, the descriptions of the nature were beautiful. I loved this kind of inspirational story of a character who did not have a lot of knowledge, didn't have a lot of like nature survival skills. He, you know, in the beginning had to be taught how to make a fire. He had no idea how to do anything. He had lived in New York City his whole life. He had, you know, no natural skills practically, but he learned, he taught himself, he figured it out. So I really enjoyed this book. It is also part of a series, I believe, and I haven't read the other books, but making this video reminds me that maybe I should prioritize those books, because I had a really good time reading My Side of the Mountain. Then I have Emily's Runaway Imagination. This is by Beverly Cleary, and I heard about this book from Kate Howe, and I was previously not aware of this. I feel like this is kind of an underrated Beverly Cleary, but it shouldn't be, because it is so, so good. We are following this little girl who lives in a small town in Oregon, I believe. She receives a letter one day from her cousin who lives in a big city and is talking about all of, you know, the amazing things she has in her city, and talks about their public library and how she can go and borrow a book and take it home and read it and then return it. And Emily is, you know, amazed. She's like, this is the most wonderful thing. We need to have a library too in our, you know, small rural town. And that is her goal. And with her mother's help, they set about trying to raise funds and, you know, get people in the community on board with creating this library. The mother-daughter dynamic in this story is so sweet and so wonderful, how Emily's mom just really supports her and is, you know, helping her to achieve this goal. You get to meet all of the different townspeople, and there are, you know, some fun personalities and things going on. Emily is such a sweet character. She reminds me in some ways of Anne from Anne of Green Gables. And this is a classic that I feel like is kind of underrated, but is a really sweet, charming story. And finally, I have to mention The Star That Always Stays by Anna Rose Johnson. This is a more recent middle grade book. It's historical, that I absolutely love. Along with The Vanderbeekers, this to me is just middle grade that feels like a classic book. And that's kind of what I'm looking for in more modern middle grade. I want them to feel reminiscent of the great classics. But anyways, this is historical fiction. We're following Norvia. And she is half indigenous. Her mother's side of the family is indigenous, and her father's side of the family is Scandinavian. I don't remember which country he was from, but he's Scandinavian. And, you know, there's some tension between her mother's side of the family and her father. Her father, you know, doesn't really like this Native American side of the family. He kind of wants to suppress it and hide it because, you know, people are discriminated against because of that. And Norvia is growing up kind of amidst all of this tension and this struggle. Eventually, her parents get divorced. She's living with her mom, and her mom remarries. And Norvia is kind of, you know, figuring out this new family dynamic she has, but also her identity that she is kind of having to hide and doesn't want people to know that her family is Native American. Norvia has a deep, deep love of books, of classic books. You know, all of the great children's classic books she talks about and references. She talks about wanting to be a heroine herself, wanting to be like Anne Shirley, and it is so much fun to read this book. If you like children's literature, you will love this book and love Norvia with all of her references and all of the books she's reading. I loved, you know, all of the characters in this book, and the new blended family. We get to meet some fun people, and it's just a charming, heartwarming, uplifting kind of story. My list of 10 favorite middle grade books that I read in the past year. There are some real winners. Looking at this list, I read a lot of good stuff, and I'm really excited for the middle grade books I've been reading this March and the year ahead. So let me know below if you've read any of these books, if you love them, what are some of your favorite middle grade books that you've read recently. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.